Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and take a look at our first simple construction drawing. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this drawing together using the basic shapes that we studied this week. The basic shapes that we studied and shaded this week were a sphere, a cylinder, and this is kind of considered a sphere. It's kind of an egg shape. And this is kind of a pointy cylinder type shape, and you have some squares here. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this drawing down into its simple shapes. We're going to redraw this thing, and then we're going to add other additional shapes to create our different ranges of value, including the shadows. Okay, so again, we have a circle, we have a cylinder, I don't know if you can see that, and we have kind of this egg shape, which is kind of a circle. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just put this off to the side, and I'm going to grab myself a fresh piece of drawing paper. All right, and I'm going to put this up here, and I'm going to draw. And what I did ahead of time was I just kind of sketched out a little rough sketch of the shapes, but I'm going to redo this, and I want you to watch how I reconstruct the shapes. Now, the image that you have in Google Classroom in your document is what you're going to be attempting to draw, and you can also find this on the website as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of tighten up these basic shapes. I'm going to add additional shapes to the bird, and you can kind of see how I start from finish, right? I'm starting with some basic shapes, cleaning up those basic shapes, adding some shadow shapes in different values to arrive at a three-dimensional effect of a bird, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to clean up that oval shape. And you can see my undersketch here, like here would be the cylinder, here would be the sphere and the egg shape along with the kind of pointed cylinder. Now this is going to flow together very nicely into one shape. At this point, I'm just going to kind of draw slow, real lightly. Okay, and I'm going to go over my construction. Now, remember, construction is starting the drawing with the basic shapes, adding the form as we go until we get a nice completed full drawing. Okay, so you can kind of see that I'm going over the shapes. All right. Okay, so now what I want to do is just kind of work on a little bit of the leg shape here, and then you can kind of treat those as cylinders as well. Okay, and you can kind of see that I'm going over my construction drawing, kind of retracing the shapes. Okay, but I'm also tightening it up as I go, and you will see how we can kind of start building this shape of a bird from start to finish. Okay, so here's kind of my basic overall shape, and you can kind of see that I traced over the oval, the cylinder, and the egg. At this point, what I can do is I can kind of just start building in some of the shadow shapes, right? Those shadow shapes would be things like this shape here and some of the feathers as well. And this is a nice little simple 2-3 value drawing. It's not too complicated. So let's go ahead and I'm going to put that back up here, and I'm going to draw in some of those basic shapes of shadow, and I'm going to build up my value just a little bit to give this thing kind of a three-dimensional look. Okay, so what you can see here is I'm just drawing the shadow shape. Okay, and I see kind of a shape that comes in here. And this is going to be a shape here, and this is going to be a shape here. Now you're going to hear me over and over and over say shape, shape, shape. Okay, shape is the most important part of drawing. When you break these things down into some simple shape, the drawing becomes more easy to manage. And when you add your value, it becomes more three-dimensional. Okay, so I'm going to go in and just kind of add that shadow shape of the eye there. So now I'm going to go ahead and just lightly shadow in and shade in my value shape. Okay. Now remember how I was telling you guys that shading and Adding your shading is your own personal style as long as the values read correctly. And what I'm doing here is I'm kind of adding my own personal style of shading. Now, I like to kind of go back and forth like a line. Okay, I like kind of just doing lines to create my shadows of darks. I like to do my dark shapes first. Okay. And then here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly start shading in those number 1, 2, and 3 values that we talked about in our previous lesson. Now, of course, I can make this more complicated and I can do a very full detailed drawing, but for the sake of time, I just want to show you how we break down some of these values into light and dark, and the bird itself will begin to kind of take on a three-dimensional look. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of sketch in my major values here. Now, if I go outside the line, that's okay. We're just kind of sketching. And now I want to do is just, I'm going to kind of go back and I'm going to refine those shadow shapes a little bit more. Look for my real dark shapes. Okay, starting to add more cast shadows into my basic shape of the cylinder and the egg. And for the sake of time, I don't want to spend too much time going into great details, but you can begin to see that those simple shapes are now taking on a three-dimensional form. Okay, you can see the cylinder shape here. You can see the oval. All right, and I'm going to lightly just kind of sketch in some shadow shape along the beak area. Okay, and this is going to need to extend out a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm just kind of going back in and cleaning up those values. I don't want to overshade. I don't want to overvalue. I just want to make sure that I have a nice range of dark and light values where the deep shadows go, the highlights, and those mid-tone values. Okay. All right, so that's going to blend out here a little bit. So what I'm going to do next is show you that I created a dark value. Okay, just like we've been practicing this week, I created a middle value. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch in my highlight shapes. I'm going to bump that up just a little bit. I'm going to punch in my highlight shapes with my eraser. And this is where a lot of the magic starts to happen, where this becomes more of a three-dimensional form because I have shadows, right? So now I need to put in highlights. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find those highlights in that picture. And I'm going to just kind of pick them out with my eraser. Okay. And I see a little bit more of a highlight shadow here. Okay. So here, what I'm going to do now is just clean it up a little bit. I'm going to work on the feet a little bit. I guess they're feet. I'm not sure what those are called. Okay. All right. I'm going to add just a little bit of shadow here, and then I'm going to add a little shadow along the cylinder of the leg because the leg kind of has a cylinder shape. Now remember, the light's coming in this way, so that part of the cylinder shape is going to be shaded on this side, just like you see here. I'm going to do the same over to that side. Okay, so now we can kind of see that these simple shapes turned into a three-dimensional form, which we happen to call a bird, okay, or a seagull. I'm going to just lightly shade in that last little shape there, okay. Just for the sake of fun, let's go ahead and draw in the beam that he's sitting on. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and extend that. I'm going to erase this out a little bit so we can see the beam a little bit better. Okay, the beam's going to come out to about right there. And again, I'm just lightly sketching it in. You can use a ruler if you want, but we're just kind of practicing today. Okay. I'm going to just draw that out a little bit, and you got a little bit of a shape here. Okay. And you have some lighter value of the water surrounding the bird here that we can add in just to bring in a little more dimension. Now remember, guys, today we're just practicing. This is like our sketchbook, right? We're just practicing what we see. It doesn't have to be perfect. We are just having fun with this guy. I'm going to add in some shadow here on top of that beam so you can see that a little better. All right, and this guy's going to drop down here, a little shadow there, and I'm going to fill that in. Okay, so this drawing was done with a simple circle or a sphere, kind of an egg shape. We had a cylinder type of shape. Okay, and then we also had kind of this extended egg shape. And these are the three major shapes that we see here. Okay, this kind of cylinder shape here, and this kind of, draw that a little better so you can see it. Okay, that's kind of a cylinder shape. And then this body kind of has this egg shape to it. Okay, so what we did was we constructed this drawing using three basic shapes. We added a little bit of value. Now, the value here is just a sketch. When we get into more detailed drawings, I will help you read those values a little bit better. Okay, but we're just sketching for today. And here you have a shaded form that is three-dimensional. And this process is what you want to follow when you want to start doing your drawings from start to finish. Okay, so I'm going to just bring this back in real quick. And here you see the highlighted forms: circle, cylinder, egg, kind of a pointy triangle. I always want you guys to think shape, shape, shape with a little bit of shadow. Here you go, guys. Let's go ahead and give this a try.